האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dober V'Yetzer. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Miketz. We're going to do Os Yud Gimel, section number 13. Our learning is in memory of Raphael ben Zakiya, Le'iloi Nishmato, for the elevation of his neshama. We are going to take a look at two psukim from the Parsha before we begin, and then one pasuk from Sefer Yeshaya. Let's take a look at the psukim. This is Perek Mem Gimel in Parshas Miketz, of course. Psukim Hey and Vav. What's happening here is that the brothers, Yaakov sent his 10 sons. He kept Binyamin at home, and he sent the 10 sons down to Mitzrayim to get food because there was a famine in the land of Israel. And when the 10 sons got there, they did not recognize Yosef, but Yosef recognized them. And Yosef said, I'm going to keep Shimon here because I think you guys are spies. And so I'm going to keep Shimon, one of the brothers, here with me till you go home and bring your youngest brother that you told me about, namely Binyamin, bring him back. And once you bring him back, it will prove the veracity of your story, and then I'll release Shimon. They all went home, and of course their money had been put back in their bags and their sacks, and they come home and tell their father the whole story. And then they tell him, we can't go back to Mitzrayim to get more food and to rescue Shimon without bringing Binyamin. So he obviously, Yaakov Avinu, is adamant about not sending Binyamin and putting him in any danger. So here is the pasuk. V'im eincha mishaleach lo nereid. The sons say to Yaakov, if you don't send Binyamin with us, we can't go back down to Mitzrayim. Ki ha'ish amare lenu, because the man, meaning Yosef, the viceroy in Egypt, said to us, Lo siru fanai bilti achichem itchem. You will not see my face unless your brother is with you. So the brother said to their father, that's a strict command. That's an order. And that means if we go back without our youngest brother, Binyamin, he will kill us. He's not going to allow us to survive. We have to bring Binyamin. Otherwise, we can't go back to Mitzrayim. Vayomer Yisrael, and Yisrael, Yaakov Avinu said, Loma hare osem li. Why have you done evil to me? Lahagid la'ish, to tell this man, ha'od lachem och, that you had another brother. Yaakov is saying, why in the world would you ever mention that you had another brother at home, which opened the door, created the possibility for him to say, bring that brother down. You should have not mentioned Binyamin at all, and then he never could have said that you needed to bring Binyamin down to Mitzrayim. Why have you done this to me? Those are two psukim from our parsha. And now a pasuk from Sefer Yeshaya. This is Perek Mem, pasuk Chav Zayin. Loma somar Yaakov. Why does Yaakov say, Usedaber Yisrael? And why does Yisrael speak? Nistara darki me Hashem. My way is hidden from Hashem, meaning Hashem is not watching me, Hashem is not looking out for me. Ume Elokai mishpoti ya'avor, and from my God, my judgment has passed. Hashem is not watching out for me. Hashem is not taking care of me and protecting me. That's the pasuk in Yeshaya, which we'll see how the Zera Shimshon fits these psukim together. Let's take a look now in the Zera Shimshon text itself, Os Yud Gimel, section 13, Parshas Miketz, Medrash. The Medrash Rabbah on Bereshis quotes our pasuk, Vayomer Yisrael loma hareosem li. Yisrael, Yaakov Avinu said, why have you done evil to me? Amar Rabbi Levi, Amar Rabbi Chama bar Chanina. Rabbi Levi said, quoting Rabbi Chama bar Chanina, Me olam lo yotza dovar shel batala mipi Avinu Yaakov. Never did it happen that words of idle words, words that were unnecessary to say, and also includes incorrect words, never did they come, inappropriate words, never did such words come out of the mouth of Yaakov Avinu. Elakach omar HaKodesh Baruch Hu. But in this situation, Hashem said, in other words, after Yaakov said to his sons, "Why have you done evil to me?" to tell this viceroy of Egypt that you have another brother at home, here's what Hashem said about that. Ani osek lahamlich beno b'Mitzrayim. I am involved in making Yaakov's son Yosef the king, the ruler in Mitzrayim. That's what I'm setting up. V'hu omer lomo harayosem li. And Yaakov, meanwhile, says to his sons, "Why have you done evil to me?" Hu de'at omar. This is what is reflected in the pasuk in Yeshaya. Loma somar Yaakov. Why does Yaakov say, "V'chule nistara darki me Hashem"? V'chule, my way is hidden from Hashem. Meaning, Hashem has a plan, obviously, and the plan that he's putting into effect is for Yosef to end up in Mitzrayim, to miraculously become the second most powerful man in the realm, and to be there so that when the Jewish people come, when Yaakov and the family come down, they will be able to be taken care of and treated with the utmost consideration and care by Yosef, who will have the power to do so. And the food, they will have plenty of food, even though there's a famine affecting different parts of the world and affecting Egypt and Eretz Canaan. This is all what Hashem is doing. And yet Yaakov is saying, why did this bad thing, why did this terrible thing happen to me? And that's what's reflected in the pasuk in Yeshaya. Why is Hashem not seeing my problems? Why is Hashem seemingly not aware of the bad things that are happening to me? So we have in this first paragraph in the Zera Shimshon an apparent contradiction. On the one hand, we have the Medrash quoting a statement that Yaakov Avinu never said anything that was incorrect, inappropriate, or even just idle, even just for no reason, no purpose. All of his words were chosen carefully and very consciously, and so his words can be studied for their accuracy and their correctness and their appropriateness. On the other hand, it looks like that Hashem is saying, why did Yaakov Avinu say, Loma hariosim, why have you done this terrible thing to me? Didn't Yaakov Avinu know and trust Hashem to be whatever was happening, to be planning it and all be part of Hashem's plan? That's the question. Next paragraph. Paragraph on the left. Kavonas hamedrash hazeh lichora nisteres. The intent of this medrash, this excerpt that we just read in the first paragraph from the Medrash Rabbah, appears to be contradictory. In other words, there appears to be a problem. She'im bo lomar, because if the intent of the Medrash was to come to say, sha'af bepam hazos lo yotze devoro levatola, that even in this situation, when Yaakov said to his sons, why did you do the terrible mistake of telling the man, the ruler in Egypt, about your other brother, if that also was not considered levatola, not considered incorrect or inappropriate, halo mipshotan shel devorov nireh, from the simple meaning of the words in the Medrash, shetoah, it would appear that he made a mistake. Shetola haroah hazos al tzad hamikra. He appeared to be saying that the bad thing that was happening, which was that he would have to send Binyamin down to Mitzrayim because the brothers had slipped up and mentioned Binyamin. Yaakov seems to be saying this is mikra, this is a chance happening that took place, all because you slipped up and mentioned Binyamin. Velotolo lomar, and Yaakov apparently did not make this dependent, shebo'olo me'es hamakom, that this was all happening from Hashem. In other words, if Yaakov Avinu, as we would expect from a tzaddik like Yaakov Avinu and from all of the avos, if Yaakov Avinu connected every single thing that happened to hashgacha pratis, to the personal supervision and direction from Hashem, then why did he say to his sons, how could you do this to me? It's all part of Hashem's plan. It wasn't because they made a mistake and they mentioned something they shouldn't have mentioned. Ve'od, and furthermore, shahanovi mochicho. If you think Yaakov didn't say something inappropriate here when he questioned his sons, the Navi in Yeshaya seems to criticize Yaakov. Lama Somar Yaakov, why does Yaakov say that Hashem is not watching him and protecting him every second? V'im nomar shelo ta'ah. And if we want to argue, as the Medrash begins by saying that Yaakov Avinu never said anything inaccurate, inappropriate, or even just for no purpose, Lama hanavi mochicho, why does the pasuk in Yeshaya seem to criticize him? So that's the contradiction, the apparent contradiction in the Medrash itself, where on the one hand it starts by saying a beautiful, amazing thing about Yaakov Avinu, that every single word that he said and every statement that he made was always perfectly planned and perfectly phrased and accurate and correct and appropriate. That's on the one hand. But then the Medrash goes on to say that in this situation, Yaakov apparently was saying something that Hashem did not feel was fully appropriate, because Hashem is doing everything to make Yosef powerful and in charge and able to save the family from his high position in Mitzrayim. And Hashem is saying, and Yaakov is saying, Loma hariosem li, to his sons, why have you done this terrible thing, as if it somehow wasn't part of Hashem's plan. That's the question. Next page, paragraph on the right. V'yesh lomar de'in hachinami. And we can say that it's absolutely true, shelo yotza dovar shel batola mipiv, that the Medrash wants us to take literally the statement that it opens with, that no words, no statements that were inaccurate and inappropriate or even just meaningless came out of his mouth, ever came out of Yaakov Avinu's mouth. Klomar, this means to say, shelo ta'ah. Yaakov did not make a mistake. V'lo ta'ah divorav al tzad hamikra. And he did not make this situation that he was in dependent upon chance or a slip-up or a mistake that the brothers made. That's not what's happening. We shouldn't view it that way. Rak tola hakol miyodo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yaakov instead made everything dependent upon the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Zera Shimshon tells us, even though it might seem from the statement in the Medrash above in the first paragraph that Yaakov Avinu was saying something that was incorrect and even inappropriate, and he didn't seem to fully grasp Hashem's plan, and that's what was making this event happen, and that's why Binyamin needed to go down. Zera Shimshon said that is not correct. Yaakov Avinu was 100% fully aware that everything that was happening came from Hashem. V'chavonos Yaakov hayisokach. And the actual intent of Yaakov when he said to his sons, how could you do this to me, is as follows. She'amru zichronom levracha. It's based on something that Chazal teach us in Masechta Shabbos, al pasuk, on a pasuk in Devarim, ki yipol hanofel mimenu. This is a pasuk in the section that talks about the mitzvah, the obligation that every Jewish person has to put a fence, a railing around the roof of his home in order that no one goes up and falls off of the roof. How this applies nowadays when people don't have access to the roof is a good question. But in those days, the houses were made that you could go up to the roof. People would dry produce on the roof. People would go sit in, if there was a nice breeze, sit on the roof. People wanted, if they wanted sun, would go up to the roof. So if a house is constructed in a way that people have access to the roof, as they did in the time of the Torah and this mitzvah, then 100% without any doubt, a person has to put a makah, a railing and around the roofs, because people could go there, and the Torah wanted to make sure they were protected and couldn't fall off. So the Torah in that context, while discussing that mitzvah, says, Ki yipol hanofel mimenu. If you don't have this ma'akah, this protective railing, then a nofel, a fallen person, might fall from your roof. So the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos wants to understand, why is the person who's about to fall, who might fall from your roof, called a nofel, a fallen person? He didn't fall yet. You're putting the railing there so that the person doesn't fall. So why are we calling him a nofel, a fallen person? Gemara answers, ro'oi ze lipo. It means that if a person were to fall off someone's roof, they're referred to as a nofel. They're referred to someone who it would be appropriate. He was judged min hashamayim. He was already judged, and it was appropriate that this person fall off the roof and perhaps suffer an injury or perhaps die, because that was the din, that was the ruling in the judgment min hashamayim, and that's why he's called a nofel. This person is, so to speak, already the verdict has been issued against the person who falls off the roof, that this is what's going to happen to him. So then why would we blame a person, the owner of the home, if he doesn't put a railing around the roof for the outcome, for what happens to this person who had it coming to himself, so to speak? Elishem megalgalin chova al yedei chayav. The answer is, the Chazal teach us that when something bad happens to a person through the involvement of another person, that other person is guilty of something, and that's why it was caused to happen in connection with him. So if a person owns a home and he doesn't put a makah on the roof, and a person falls off the roof and, God forbid, is seriously injured or even dies, so the Torah is teaching us, he can't say, oh, it was an accident and I had nothing to do with it. The person who fell off the roof, even though that person was min hashamayim, destined to fall and die or be seriously injured in the way that happened, nonetheless, Hashem could have arranged that to happen in hundreds, thousands of other ways, but Hashem brought it about through this particular homeowner, because this homeowner was guilty of something that brought this incident to his home and made it happen in that place and at that time. The Omar Yaakov, and so Yaakov was saying, with that concept in mind, with that idea in mind, Yaakov Avinu was saying, Yodati ki bevadai hakodesh baruch hu gozar haroa hazos. Hashem certainly, I know for a fact that Hashem certainly decreed that this terrible thing that I'm experiencing, that my son Binyamin, who I'm trying to protect in every way that I possibly can, he's going to be torn from me and brought on this dangerous journey to Mitzrayim, and will have to confront this evil viceroy, this ruthless and vicious ruler in Mitzrayim. This certainly comes from Hashem. Yaakov Avinu says, that I certainly know. Omnam, however, lefish and is galgula al yedchem, because this has come about through you, he said to his sons, tzorich lomar shegam atem chayovim, we have to say that you are also guilty in some way for something you did, and that's why it happened through you. This could have been brought about in some totally different way. There's no limit to the way that Hashem can control the world and rules the universe and can bring various events about. It's unlimited. It's limitless. However, Yaakov said to his sons, Lama harayosem, what have you done bad that caused Hashem to bring about this result that was going to happen anyway, because it was part of Hashem's plan? Why did Hashem bring it about through the words that you said to the viceroy in Mitzrayim? That's the Zera Shimshon's way of understanding the pasuk and the medrash that's explaining how Yaakov Avinu's statements could all be accurate, appropriate, correct, and meaningful, and nonetheless the medrash appeared to question why Yaakov said what he said, and now we have the true understanding of what Yaakov meant. No question that Hashem was organizing and controlling everything, and Reuven ending up being brought to Mitzrayim was going to happen because it was part of Hashem's plan. But Yaakov said to his sons, if this happened through you and what you said and what you did, you need to do introspection. You need to look inside yourselves and find out what have you done wrong that caused Hashem to bring this about, this terrible event about through you. Next paragraph. V'zehu loma hareosem li. And this is what Yaakov actually meant when he said, why have you done this evil to me? Loma gamatem chiyavtem atzmechem lemokom. Why have you made yourself guilty in the eyes of Hashem? Ki bishvil zeh nisgalgal al yedchem haroah hazos. Because of something you did that made you guilty in the eyes of Hashem, he brought about this situation with Binyamin, so terrible for the family, through you. But certainly we understand that Yaakov Avinu knew that everything came from Hashem and was being organized and controlled by Hashem. Rak hayasover. However, Yaakov thought shahagolus, that the exile to Mitzrayim, top of the next column on the left, Yovo Machmas Onesh, was going to come about because of a punishment. That's how Yaakov Avinu viewed the situation. That yes, Golus was coming, exile was coming, the Jewish people were going to be exiled out of the land of Canaan, and they were going to end up in a foreign land, and they were going to suffer there and be enslaved there. And Yaakov Avinu viewed that as a punishment for some type of sin or sins that they had been involved in. Ve'eno kain, that is not what happened. She'adarabah, just the opposite. Hagolus hayu l'tov lohem. The exile to Mitzrayim and the suffering there was actually for the good of the Jewish people. Kedei sheyizdakechu bechor habarzel, in order that they would be purified in the iron crucible. The crucible is a kli, is a vessel in which precious metals are heated and purified. For example, gold and silver go into a crucible to be purified and have all of the impurities removed. And that's what Mitzrayim was for the Jewish people. As we've written previously. And even if we want to say that the brothers, called the tribes here, the 10 brothers, even if we want to say that their words brought about the exile in a certain way, a certain aspect, Eino Simon Shehem Chayovim, this doesn't mean they did anything wrong, Kimosha Savar Yaakov, as Yaakov Avinu thought. So in other words, even though Yaakov Avinu, not for a moment did he think that something could happen that wasn't part of Hashem's plan and controlled by Hashem, nonetheless, there was a part of his thinking which wasn't fully comprehending of Hashem's plan and motivation. In Yaakov's mind, the fact that this was happening was Hashem's plan, of course, but it was happening as an onesh, as a kind of punishment. And therefore he said to his sons, look at what's happening. Something bad is happening. It must be that you did something wrong, and that's why this bad thing was brought about through you. And Zera Shimshon says, actually, the goal is to Mitzrayim, even with the suffering and even with the slavery, was for the ultimate good of the Jewish people and the good of Am Yisrael, for them to have this experience. And Hashem knew that the experiences and the suffering in Mitzrayim would purify the Jewish people and prepare them to come out of Mitzrayim as a nation ready to receive the Torah and ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. Next paragraph. V'al zeh hanovi mochicho. It's about this point that in Yeshaya, in Sefer Yeshaya, Yaakov is being criticized. Shehoil de amrinan b'medrash rabbah. Since we say in the Medrash Rabbah in a different place, al pasuk vayehi hashemesh ba'a. This is regarding the bris bein habisarim earlier in Bereshis, where Hashem appears to Avram, and it says that the sun was setting. So the Medrash Rabbah's comment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu nasan eitza la'Avraham, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave advice to Avraham sheyivror hagolius litovas Yisrael, that he should choose the experience of exile for the Jewish people for their own good. Lo hayolo lochush klal shehagolush yelera lohem, and therefore, because Avram Avinu made the choice based on Hashem's recommendation that in the future there should be the Jewish people will experience golus. Therefore, it can't be a bad thing. It can't be viewed as a bad thing. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore Hashem said, as quoted in the Medrash in our first paragraph, Ani osek lahamlich beno b'Mitzrayim. I'm involved in crowning Yosef and giving him the power of the second in command in Mitzrayim, kedei she'yeh simon liYisrael shehagolus hu l'tovosam, in order to be a sign for the Jewish people that the golus to Mitzrayim is actually for their good. If Yosef had not been sent down to Mitzrayim and had not been imprisoned, had not been taken out of prison and become the second in command, the viceroy to Paro, if none of that had happened and the Jews had come down, Yaakov Avinu, his family, if they had come down in different circumstances, there would have been no way for them to say and think, oh, this is actually for our benefit. But Yosef was already there. Yosef was in power, and therefore they could see that Hashem was working everything out for their good. Kidila'el b'samach, as we've stated previously. Who omer nistara darki, but Yaakov said, my way, what I'm experiencing is hidden from Hashem. Shesover shehu l'ro'ah, because he thought that the exile to Mitzrayim, which he understood was going to happen and would be beginning when the brothers went back with Binyamin, and then later on this would lead to all of them coming down to Mitzrayim. Yaakov thought that was a bad thing that would be happening as an onesh, as a punishment, when actually it was a good thing, and it was what Avram Avinu had chosen based on Hashem's advice, his eitzah, and that's the part of the picture that Yaakov Avinu wasn't fully comprehending and not fully cognizant of. So the Zera Shimshon has taken this episode, this statement, I should say, that's part of the episode of the brothers, and they're going back to Mitzrayim, and Yaakov Avinu's tremendous fear and efforts to keep Binyamin from having to go back. And Zera Shimshon has taken his words, has brought in the Medrash Rabbah and other quotes and statements from Chazal to give us a whole entirely different perspective. That, number one, shows us that Yaakov's his emunah, his bitachon, his awareness that everything is controlled by Hashem was 100% in place. And what appeared to be his questioning of that, or his not fully seeing that, was actually an entirely different point. And his seeing the Golus in Mitzrayim that was upcoming as being a bad thing and an onesh, when actually it was all l'tovosam, that for the good of the Jewish people, for Am Yisrael and their development and the future plans that Hashem had for them. Yasher koach for joining in the learning in the Zera Shimshon this week, and we look forward to Be'ezus Hashem to learning again together in the Zera Shimshon on next week's Parsha.